Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar at Titus Talent Strategies. We are looking at the whole person. We're looking at the resume and beyond, and looking at all the things that go into the whole person. You as an individual, and when you hire people and bring them into your organization. You're joining us in the middle of a webinar series, a 4-part series. This is almost a bit of a summary of all of them. And so you joined a good one. But so thanks for being here. Our mission as a company has always been to empower companies to make the best attraction, engagement, hiring, and development decisions to meet their organization's people and performance objectives. And since 2010, we've been doing this. We started partnering with a company called Milwaukee Tool back then, helping them with some very, very critical hiring. And it's been wildly successful from there on out. We've hundreds of clients around the country, and our passion, again, is just really helping companies with their people. We're not an HR company, we're a talent strategy company. It's built really on the foundation of being a high-performance recruiting firm, but we'll go way beyond that. So today, we're in this presentation. It's interactive, and please do. There's a little Q&A button at the bottom. You can write your questions in there, and we'll do our best to answer them. Or historically, over the last few that we've done is actually come to take some summary of a few of the questions and lump them together and respond that way. So, but thanks a lot. Please do that. It's confidential, as in people won't see your question on the screen, so don't worry about that. All right, so like I said, we're in the series right now. We're looking at the whole person, and the whole person, we've broken it down into 3 major components: the head, the heart, and the briefcase. And so today, we are really going to be focusing on the whole person, but we've done the briefcase, which is the performance trajectory of the candidate, looking at their resume, looking at their education, looking at their history. What do they bring to the table, and how do we predict high level of performance? The heart is all about value alignment, and the head is all about what's going on up here. So we'll capture a summary of all of these things today. And but it's my privilege to actually introduce you to Scott Seefeld, who's the president of Titus Talent Strategies. He and I have worked together for about 10 years now, and it's a great treat to have him. So Scott, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became so passionate about hiring and candidates and the whole person and all those kind of things.
Well, it really started my career as a bean counter, and I realized that over a period of time that I traded my passion for finances for people. And of course, Jonathan, that's when we met, and we've learned a lot together as we've gone on this journey. And one of the things I'd like to talk about on the next slide is part of that journey has been interacting with traditional recruiters. And one of the things that's always been a struggle back, especially in my CFO days, is I found traditional recruiters were trying to sell me people. They were very helpful in many cases, but they would try to sell the person because that's how they got paid. That's how that model works. And so as we developed our model, and you know this, Jonathan, that it really is about looking at the whole person, not just trying to get a fill, not just trying to get someone in the role, but how do you get the right person in the right seat, and doing that in an effective manner, and that's really why we're here today on the webinar.
It's so funny looking at this slide and hearing Scott speak. He and I met when I was one of those recruiters. I was one of those traditional recruiters actually but I wasn't one of the bad ones. You know, I was a good one. I wasn't a resume flinger, but trying to work out how to serve the organization that Scott was a part of with their people, and what is the best right person, right seat, and figuring those things out. How do we look at the real quality of hire, and this whole thing of different by design? When we had this great alliance together, realizing we're talking the same language here. How do we understand what's going on, and how do you measure quality of hire? How do you increase quality of hire? And so yeah, it's good to be named one of those traditional recruiters.
So our brand is really about the quality of hire. And there's 3 key things that we look at. We look at the head, the heart, and the briefcase. The head is looking at behavioral traits, cognitive. So how do people think? How do they behave? Mm-hmm. The heart, which we'll go into a little more in a minute, is looking more at their why, what motivates them, what drives them, what's their internal makeup. Mm-hmm. And then also looking at the briefcase. And the briefcase is their background, their skills and experience. And oftentimes that third spot, that briefcase, is all that recruiters, the traditional recruiters, as we mentioned earlier, they focus on the briefcase. But in order to get the whole person, you really need all three.
Yeah, this part of this story, like I said, we launched a radically different approach, different model with our first client back in 2010 with Milwaukee Tool. We still work with them today and got great relationships there. One of the things we came on this big wrestle was how do you provide a service to companies, whatever it is, and actually put a guarantee on it? And Scott used to often ask me, like, well, what's the guarantee? What's the guarantee when majority of what we were doing at the time was recruitment and helping companies with their hires? I'm like, well, you can't guarantee that. You can't guarantee what? A lot of recruiters out there will guarantee that somebody won't quit. You're thinking, wow, why are we hedging our bets on that? Surely the whole purpose of hiring somebody is they get something done. And so we'd say, okay, what are the 3 to 5 things they need to get done? And can I guarantee that? And so I would start talking to some of the best brains and minds in the industry who've been around for decades and decades doing recruitment. I said, how do I go about this and put a guarantee in place? And the response was always, you can't really, because there's so many factors at play. And so we came down to this thing, and Scott just wouldn't let it go. He just said, you have to put a guarantee in place, So we said, well, what if we could guarantee performance? And so what if we could guarantee that the person will do, achieve, or accomplish that which we said they would or we thought they would? That's what we set out for. And so that's how we function today. I mean, the best guarantee in the industry, and then our clients and partners around the country saying, how do you help us increase the quality of hire that we're doing internally? And that's where knowledge transfer came in. Hence this webinar as well. This series that we're doing was helping companies and training them around how to increase their quality of hire. Often we get into hiring somebody for what they know, and then we end up firing them for who they really are. But you've got to understand the whole person, all the different dynamics. You can't just, I think we said at one of the other webinars, we can't take a job description and hold it up and try and match over resumes and find the one with the most amount of connections and hope that they must be really good because there's our description and their resume aligns. There's so much more dynamic going on to it, including culture, including the hiring team, including their co-workers, including the vision of the organization and value alignment. We're like, whoa, how do we break this out that it's not just about the resume? So, maybe talk to us a little bit about that, Scott, because we in our last webinar around the head or predictive index, we had some takeaways, but I know you got stories on these things because you've been doing this for many years.
Yeah, so we're going to get into, it's a great question, and I'm going to share a story here. Our guarantee is for a 1-year period. So if that person doesn't hit their top performance or they leave, we guarantee that for 1 year, as Jonathan mentioned, best in the industry. So we're going to get into a little bit on how do we do that. So from the head standpoint, I want to share an example of, we had someone in a pioneering sales position. And this person was pioneering a national practice for us. And the person was just doing okay. We had them take a different assessment tool that we used prior to getting the predictive index. And it said she'd be fine for the job. As we got into that, we were just not seeing the results, not seeing the pioneering, driving results that we thought, the behaviors that we wanted to see. So pioneer need to be able to really drive, they're charting new territory. And we just didn't see that. So we got involved with the predictive index, and it showed a whole different look inside that person's head. And it really taught us to realize that this person is more of a promoter, maybe more of a trainer. And so we ended up switching this person from a driving sales role into more of a facilitator kind of training role. And it really made a huge difference. It made a huge difference for that person, and we started to see results really taking off.
Yeah, I think that the alignment there of those things, had we been able to assess the role, say what behaviors are really needed here, and let's match the candidate to that, the person we're thinking, let's find out where the gaps are behaviorally, not from experience, but actually, do they function in the way we need them to function in this specific role, in this specific time period in our organization, and what stages of our organization we're at? That would have been tremendous. Would have been tremendous. And this is not about a person in the sense of they're a good or a bad person. It's absolutely they're a performing person, a high performer, but in the right seat. And so then the heart. This is a great one as far as the buzzword of culture. Everything's about culture. You got to hire for culture. I hear it all the time. Hire for culture. Hire for this. Hire for culture. And you think, okay, what do you mean by that? And it's so gray and mushy that how can you possibly hire for culture when you're not defining what those values are? What do you mean by culture in your organization? Can you define it? Can you define it to the point where it's measurable? And can you create a scorecard around that? So we talked about this on the webinar, how we've created a scorecard to actually measure on culture. Then therefore you can actually use it in your hiring process, but you can also use it in post-hire and reviews. It's a way to massively engage and retain employees because it dials into this whole thing of cultural value alignment, and you can drive people for just engagement of them in who they are, their makeup as an individual. And so people don't leave companies, they leave their leaders, but it's leaders who actually have a good, strong value alignment. I think one of the things we talked about on the previous webinar, all about the heart, is why people make career moves. Like, why do they do that? If their history and trajectory, I think it's the amount of people we've interviewed for our organization, and you sit there in an interview and say, okay, why did you make this move to this move? And I've got to connect that to our organization. If it's I moved because the company was going to be a much greater sense of impact for me in the organization. What do you mean by that? Well, I was able to actually use my skills, gifts, and abilities to actually transform the team around me in a really, really positive way. As opposed to, well, I had a bump in income. I got a 10% increase. Oh, that's why you made that decision. Okay, cool. Well, that may not be a value alignment with our organization. Why? Because you're going to leave for 10% and I'm not going to give you a counter offer. So it's just a time bomb, ticking time bomb there, waiting for somebody to offer 10% more. But if I can figure out the real why, and that may be their why, to make as much money as possible and go step up, step up, step up. But figuring that in your interview process, then you can really engage and develop those people. It doesn't mean you can pay them less. It's saying, I understand what motivates you, and I'm going to give you freedom to run and do those things. You want people running to your organization and running in your organization as opposed to running from something else. There's a huge part, a lot of key takeaways there on the heart, but understanding value alignment, defining that, and taking away the mushiness of culture, the thumbs up, thumbs down hiring, somebody saying they're a good cultural fit or they're not a cultural fit. What do you mean by that? Really, really important.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think we see so many candidates today who are really trying to align their lived values to companies' lived values, and that's in some cases more important than compensation.
Oh, sure.
It's really, really important to have those identified.
It's because they have choices, right? They have choices and they can go wherever. What if I actually have a choice at 2 to 3% unemployment? Well, why wouldn't I be picky? Why don't I get everything all aligned up? And so for you as an organization to be attractive, you need to define what that is so people can pick what their right alignment.
So true. So true. So moving on to the briefcase side of things. So this is your background, skills, and experience. So one of the things we like to do here is we like to define performance objectives. And this is generally anywhere from 3 to 5 performance objectives, meaning what would success look like for this person and for the company in the interview process. So there's no what I like to call mystification. There's no mystery in the job itself. The recruiting process, we really emphasize quality of hire. And hopefully you got a sense of that, whether it's the head, heart, or here the briefcase, that our brand is really about the quality of hire. And that's so critical As Jonathan mentioned earlier, oftentimes people look at speed and they look at other things, but the quality of hire is really what gets people to stay. And then, finally, to attract the top talent, the employee value proposition is absolutely essential. And what the employee value proposition, or what we call EVP, if I'm an employee looking at your opportunity, why would I consider your opportunity when I already have a good job? Both are good jobs. So we ask our clients, and we work with our clients to say there needs to be a 33% increase. Now, not from a compensation standpoint, but looking at the whole opportunity. And so that employee value proposition is really, really important to identify up front, because that's how candidates are thinking. And some things might be job stretch. It might be improved culture. It might be future opportunities. Mm-hmm. So all of those things are really critical. So the EVP is really important when you look at aligning candidates with companies.
Absolutely. I think all of these things here, the head, the heart, the briefcase, defining the role, interviewing the candidate for the role, seeing how all that fits, the heart, the briefcase, all of these things coming to the point where we can say we can guarantee quality of hire. And that's why we're putting these on. We want you to be able to guarantee and increase your quality of hire. So we love the opportunity for knowledge transfer. We love the opportunity to demonstrate these principles to our partners around the country. And if you're interested in any of these trainings, you can actually do that from going to our website on the education and training and hear about some of our hire for performance training. You can hear about our understanding the predictive index more and the demos of those things that you can actually engage and retain and hire people who align with the roles. And it is all about quality. It is all about quality. The biggest pressure on right now is speed. How do I get more people in the door? But hands down, quality over speed. From all of the research that's done, everyone says that that's the most important, but the biggest pressure comes on speed. So you need a process that's reliable, that's trusted and tested to increase your quality of hire. And we've proven that it works following this. Some people say, well, can you do this on every role? Yes, you can. We would argue you can completely. So, but yeah, I see this question popping up here. You're right. Around, this sounds like a big, long process. How do I do this? And it's a little bit overwhelming. Yes, it is a little more work on the front end, but I tell you, this whole thing of the pressure on speed, 80% of turnover in any organization comes down to poor hiring decisions. I just read that recently. 80% of turnover comes down to poor hiring decisions. Well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Well, yeah, it does make sense, but that's only 20% of the loss out there saying, man, that was nothing to do with poor hiring. We just lost a real good one. 80% people are saying, no, it was a misalignment in our hiring process. Well, then get your process down so you can actually increase your quality and increase your performance as an organization. That's what we're committed to. So, hey, thanks so much for joining today. Thank you, Scott, for taking the time with us. I know there's more questions here. We're not able to get to all of them, but we'll follow up with you, make sure we respond to those and maybe kind of lump some of those together. But we'll look forward to hearing from you. If you want to stay in touch, thanks a lot for joining, and feel free to join on our next webinar coming up. Thanks very much. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.